Hi, everyone. Welcome to Just Mental Health with Steph and Em, the podcast where we discuss mental health issues from a social justice lens. I'm Emily.
And I'm Stephanie. A quick disclaimer before we get started. We are mental health professionals, but this is not to be taken as professional advice.
We are also aware that our privilege may cloud our perspective on some topics, and we not only welcome but encourage you to message us with criticism and corrections. Let's get started. So, our small business of the week, it's called Full of Swords. It's owned by a friend of mine, actually, Arik Mendelovitz. So it is Renaissance fencing classes all over the country over Zoom. Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah. $15 for an hour and a half class, and they have a Facebook page. Just look up Full of Swords. So
Full as in like Full?
Fool, Fool.
Ah, Full of
Yeah.
Swords. Cool. Okay.
Yeah, so that's have a cool, unique business.
That's cool. And they do it over Zoom.
Uh-huh.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, like regardless of pandemics or not, they do it over Zoom. They do all over the country.
Oh, wow. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, everybody check them
The
out.
country meaning the United States, since we are just saw that we're reaching Europe now.
Yeah.
Hey, Europe, if any of you are listening, thanks for tuning in.
Yeah, right. Quick shout out to our listeners in Germany, Ireland, and Slovakia, whoever you are. And if you want to reach out to us, you can always contact us on our Instagram, just_mental_health_podcast, and talk to us there and let us know that you're listening. But it's really cool that we're reaching people that far out in the world. So, all right. So today our topic is about mental health advice, but about how sometimes mental health advice can be classist.
Mm-hmm.
So to start with, I'll just give a definition of classism so that we're all, working from the same understanding and nobody's making any assumptions about, what we're talking about. So classism is defined as prejudice against or in favor of people belonging to a particular social class. So, mental health advice being classist. Where to start? Because there's a lot, and
Right.
It's unfortunate, and I feel like this topic could go in a bunch of different ways.
Right. I was thinking that too when I was trying to get my thoughts together about it, like where to even start. I think an important distinction that I wanted to make sure was made at some point through this episode was the connection between socioeconomic status and race, and how classism is kind of a form of racism in, depending on how you're looking at it, which I think it can be an episode in itself.
Yeah.
Just wanted to point that out, that, people of color are particularly affected by classism.
Right. By both classism and racism. Right. So, yeah. And classism is, it's hard to really talk about like what the social classes are in the United States, only because it's not, as far as I could find, and I didn't do an extensive search, so correct me if I'm wrong, but it's not really formally identified in any way. Typically, the jargon that we talk about when we talk about economic or social class in the United States is like upper class, upper middle class, which is, and then middle class, working, and lower class. And that's from like highest to lowest socioeconomic. So typically people like divide them up into 5.
Right. And the highest class being like just wanting to point out the distinction between, the wealth inequality is astronomical, so the highest socioeconomic status is like billionaires and million, it's a huge difference, which is another issue. Just pointing out how prominent it is, how much of an issue this is and how classism is a real thing.
Right. And so I think just to simplify things for this podcast, when we say upper class, we mean both the upper and the upper middle, because they're going to have the same access to these things that we talk about, essentially. And then we'll talk about middle class, which of course is like right in the middle. And then working and lower class will be both, when we talk about like lower, those will kind of be lumped together, because those will be the two classes in this model that will have the most barriers to either receiving services or to just doing some of this mental health advice that we're going to talk about. So that's just kind of to set up a distinction. So what I'll start, if you don't mind. I did like a little search on Instagram of some mental health tips, and I did Instagram because, well, most people are using that now, and there's a lot of like that feel good, like positive psychology, and mental health, and just physical health advice on Instagram. Some of which is really good, some of which is misinformed and not as good, and a lot of which can be classist. So when you do a search for like mental health, I'll just do that.
Are you pulling it up now?
Yeah, for tags, just on my phone. So so you get a bunch of stuff about like, people talking about their mental health, positive thinking, and then you start to get into the stuff that's like, tips for having, good mental health. And it's like a lot of them talk about exercise. Which, so we'll just start there. Exercise is definitely a good thing. It's good for your physical health. It's good for your mental health. We know that people that move their body in any way that they enjoy, for a certain amount of time a day, I think it's like 15 to 30 minutes a day, just have overall better mental health. And it can work almost as well as a low dose antidepressant for just increasing
yeah,
your
I have
mood.
heard that.
So it's good to do. I mean, it's just something that everyone should do if you can. Whatever movement, exercise that gets your body going, that you enjoy. It's not about, not about like weight loss or looking a certain way, but it's just about movement, getting the heart rate up, getting in tune with your body, and getting those, you're going to get physical health benefits from it, and you're going to get mental health benefits from it.
And so I think that what you said, physical activity that you enjoy is a pretty, like, a piece of it that is kind of starts to point to the classism, because I mean, okay, what are something that you can do for exercise that you don't need to, okay, like paying for a gym.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, maybe you can't afford a gym, so maybe you go run outside, or maybe you
Mm-hmm.
just do workouts in your
In your
living
home.
room,
Yeah.
home workouts. And that's fine, and that's, that works. But a lot of people really hate running. A lot of people
I do.
don't, don't enjoy working out at home. They like the gym atmosphere. They like the
Mm-hmm.
supportive atmosphere of, an exercise class or something. And so that's why all of these exercise classes, are popping up, like
Mm-hmm.
yoga and like kickboxing, Zumba, and then all these like gym communities like CrossFit and Orange
Mm-hmm.
Theory, which are all really great. And it's really great that all of these different varieties of exercise I feel like these things are just getting more and more popular, different
Mm-hmm.
varieties of types of exercise, which is great, but they're also expensive. And so that
Yes.
piece of finding something you enjoy, but the stuff that tends to be more fun, that has that community aspect, that maybe has like some sort of
More
fun.
structured too,
Yeah.
and like someone guiding you so
Yeah,
you
and
know what
someone
to
keeping you
do.
accountable too. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's hard to work out on your own and hold yourself accountable, not
Mm-hmm.
to mention that people in a lower socioeconomic status are probably working a lot. A lot of
Yes.
them working
That's
like 3 jobs and don't have
mm-hmm.
time for exercise.
Yeah, that was the other thing I was going to say, not just because it's like expensive to have a gym membership or to go to these classes or whatever, um, but also the time that is involved in them. And it's not just, and this is something that I personally have struggled with. So I might be speaking a little bit from my soapbox, but
Mhm,
it's not just like, oh, an hour a week to take this Zumba class. No, it is the drive time there,
mhm,
the prep, getting ready. If you're getting off work, you've got to change. Maybe you've got to eat, you've got to get your stuff, you've got to go to the gym, you do the class, then you have to get ready after, whether it's showering or changing your clothes or whatever, and then the drive time home. Or if
mhm,
you're doing it before you go to work, you're waking up early to do all of these things. You have to be extra prepared so that you can leave from the class to go to work, and so it's just not as simple as like, oh, it's an hour a week. There's
mhm.
all the prep before, all the recovery afterwards, that you have to plan your schedule around if you're working full time or even part time, and you're just not as it's your schedule's not as open to just sort of go as you need, as you want, as you can. um, that can be a real commitment for some people, and that can be a barrier for one of those things. So, you know
Mm,
money and time, even just like access to it. Like, is it on a bus route? Do you have a car? Do you have the gas money to get there?
right.
How far away is it? I live out in the middle of nowhere. Like,
That's another good point, the transportation.
yeah, but
Having your car is expensive,
mm-hmm.
so a lot of people
So,
can't afford a car. So,
yeah.
do they have that public transportation to get there?
Plus,
Yeah.
like the workout gear and like the workout clothes, that stuff doesn't come with the class, but you might have to buy extra stuff for it. Like,
Mhm.
there's a lot that goes into that. So, I mean, okay, so middle class people might be able to do some of these, group activities, these group workouts. Upper middle class and upper, so the upper class probably can afford and probably have the access and the time and the flexible scheduling, we're assuming.
Mhm.
Um, so that's probably not going to be as accessible for anyone not in those social classes and those econo- e- socioeconomic classes. So
Mhm.
then it's like you said, okay, you can go run outside, you can do it at home. There's like apps you can use, there's
And
like
let's also keep in mind
YouTube. Yeah.
sorry, the safety piece here,
Mm-hmm.
because especially for women, like
Mm-hmm.
women aren't shouldn't be, go if you're working late and then you
want to go run.
right, go
Maybe your
run or
neighborhood's
walk
not the
outside.
safest.
Yeah.
You don't live in a gated community, or you don't live in
Right.
like
So yeah, so that leaves you to doing home workouts, but then what if you have kids? You don't want to be like jumping around doing like jumping jacks and burpees and
Or if
stuff
you just
and
don't
like
have like space. You live on
don't
the
have
top
space.
floor of an
Yeah.
apartment building. Your neighbors are going to hate you if you're doing
Right.
jumping jacks at 10 p.m. at night because you got off work and you finally got the kids to bed and that's the only time you
Right.
have. Like, it is hard. It is not, and it is not the easiest thing to do. And it's definitely one of those things that this kind of goes. I'm not going to get into like weight stigma or fat phobia or anything, but this kind of covers that when we talk about like as far as like the advice given from health professionals and mental health professionals of like, well, if you just worked out, if you just ate better, if you ate healthier food, plan your meals, get fresh, locally grown things, locally sourced, ethically sourced, like all of this stuff, like, yes, you would feel better.
That stuff's
Of course you would
expensive.
feel better. Yeah. But yes, it's also expensive. It's time consuming. There are things called food deserts in the United States where people are, based on where they live, are not able to access typical grocery stores. They may only have like convenience stores or like a Dollar Tree or something. There's a lot of that around here where I live. I live in a very rural community in Kentucky. I've been here for like almost 3 years now. So I'm not from here. I'm used to living in a more of a city. But moving here, it was like, whoa, like the nearest Kroger is 30 minutes away.
Wow.
So you can't just go to Kroger to get, I mean, I have the ability, thankfully, but not everyone can just go to Kroger to get the fresh foods that they want. There's not a Whole Foods anywhere near me. It's like over an hour away. So like it just gets more and more difficult depending on where you live and your access and if you have the time and the money.
Yeah, and that's what the eating healthy food that was on my list of bullet points I wanted to make sure we cover. Because that also has a huge impact on your mental health. If you're, like sugar is horrible for your mental health.
Yes, we were
eating,
just talking about this. Like,
yeah,
we were
yeah,
eating bad this weekend and we feel bad. And it's
yeah,
because like what you put into your body does affect how well your body functions and how you feel in your mood. And so, we did this to ourselves and we know we did this to
right.
ourselves, but some people, it's not so much a choice because
Right, because like fast food, for example, is super cheap, but
yes,
it is so
and
bad for
everywhere.
you.
Yes.
And then it's like the healthier it is, the more expensive it is. And a
Oh
lot of
yeah.
people want to say, back to what you were saying, about body shaming. People want to say like, oh, well, if you are unhealthy or you're overweight or then it's your own fault. But there's so many factors that can contribute to that, one of them
Right.
being financial ability to buy healthy food, because if you don't have the money, you don't have a choice but to buy food that's unhealthy for you. If you're always working, you don't have the time to make healthy food. We just have like such busy lives. We all do. And putting that time, it's almost like you have to choose between like exercise, healthy food, and enough sleep. Like like
Oh
who can
yes,
do all of those things, which all of those things plays a
are
huge part in your
important.
mental
Yes.
health. Yeah.
Like we said, but like we all need to do those things, right? We all
Mhm.
need to sleep, we all need to eat, we all need to move. But we just may not be able to do them as much or in the most optimal way. And that is sometimes out of people's control. So that is often, advice that's given, those sort of basic things,
Mm-hmm.
is, well, make sure you're getting enough sleep, make sure you're getting quality sleep, which we've talked about before, but make sure you're eating healthy foods and you're eating the right foods, right foods in quotation marks. Because that's another thing. Like, is there any wrong food? I don't know. But and then like make sure you're exercising. And it's like, okay, great. Those three things, yes, you did all of those things, you would feel better.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone would feel better, but you may not be able to do all of those things.
Right.
And that's kind of what I was saying. It goes back to like with health advice as well, is like that's what's given. A lot of doctors will tell people like, well, you need to eat better, you need to exercise, you need to lose weight. And it's all sort of placed on like your health would just, all your health issues would just go away if you just lost 20 pounds. Like, but that's not accurate. That's not even true.
Mm-hmm.
It may or may not be affected by weight, but also that can't be, we're not going to talk about anything else until you do these things, because they may not have that ability. They may not have access to that. And
Right.
so, especially if you're on food stamps, they limit what you can buy, the things you can actually purchase with that. Um, and you only get so much a month. So you have to really be mindful of what you're spending
Mm-hmm.
every month. And you're probably going to get the same go to staples of like, I know this is cheap, this will feed my family,
Right.
this is going to
It's
get us
about
through the month.
survival,
Uh-huh.
it's about like Maslow's
I was
hierarchy
just
of
going to
needs,
go there. Yes.
if I couldn't say the word properly. Um, so I think we've talked about this in a previous episode, but just to review in case
Mhm.
anyone is unfamiliar. So it's the it's saying that your basic needs need to be met first
Mhm.
before your like higher level needs. So um
Yeah.
eating, sleeping, shelter, your basic safety is at the bottom, followed by I don't even remember all of the all of
Well,
the
I got
different
it.
levels.
I pulled it up because
Oh,
I
you
was,
did? Okay.
yeah, because I was going to go over this anyway. So Maslow's hierarchy of needs is the way it's represented, and it's a theory, but I think it's a pretty good one. I think it makes a lot
Mhm.
of sense, and so you have to be mindful of it when you're working with clients. If you're going to be, you know, um, if you're going to work from a social justice perspective, you definitely have to be
Mhm.
mindful of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. But it's a triangle, or it's a pyramid, and at the bottom, the base of the pyramid, the very first thing is the physiological needs, which is food, water, warmth, rest, all those basic things that you have to do to survive. You don't do those things, you will die.
Mhm.
Like those are needs that you just need to live. Then right above that is the safety needs, so security and safety. So are you safe? You got to be able to live somewhere where you're protected from predators. So you've got to feel a sense of security in some way, because you can't move on to any other higher needs until those basic things are met. If you don't feel safe, and if your physiological needs aren't met, you're not going to move up. And so the ones above that are like, there's belongingness and love needs, so it's
Mhm.
intimate relationships, friends, community. And then above that is esteem needs, so prestige and feeling of accomplishment. Um, and then above that, the very top part of the pyramid is self-actualization, which according to this theory is the goal. Um, and that's achieving one's full potential. And that also includes creative activities. So
Mhm.
when you think about it from like those, each sort of part of the pyramid needs to be met before you can get to the other one.
Right.
Physiological needs, absolutely first. Safety needs, absolutely first.
And
And
the top ones
mhm,
are like sound more mental-ish. Like
Mm-hmm.
they sound, and but the point is that like when you're talking about mental health, we tend to think of those top ones:
Mm-hmm.
self-actualization,
Yes.
esteem, belongingness. But you can't get those things if your
Uh-huh.
basic needs and your sense of safety and security isn't there.
Yeah.
And so that's why, that's why all of like mental health is so much more than we tend to think of it, because if people don't have access to food,
Mm-hmm.
how am I supposed to help them with their depression if they don't even
Right.
have food? Like,
Right.
you know,
Right. And then you also you look at it from, context, like, is their depression and anxiety, truly a disorder that, some cognitive behavioral therapy or dialectical behavioral therapy can help them with? Or is it a true, like, real reaction to the
mhm.
environment they're in? So if they're not safe, if they don't have an income, or if they are barely making ends meet financially, if they don't have clean water, if they're, houseless and they don't have a place to stay
Yeah.
at night, like, or a warm place to sleep, then maybe their anxiety and depression is like not anxiety and depression. It's just,
Yeah.
it's not a
And
disorder, it's a real reaction.
we're
Hmm.
so quick to pathologize them, and we're so
Hmm.
quick to say, "Oh, you're depressed, you're anxious, go to therapy." That's like, go
Hmm.
get medication. Go, those are the things that you do if
Yeah.
your mental health is suffering. Well, no, like we need to start saying, "Okay, your mental health is suffering. What are your basic needs that aren't being met?"
Right.
That
That
needs to
could be
start
the
being
first
the
thing.
first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And
just
then
check in. If they're
uh-huh.
met, great. We'll move on to the next thing. Do you feel safe where you are? And that sort of needs to be the way we ask those questions, of starting with, are your basic needs met?
Yeah.
Is there anything that you need to survive? And then, do you feel safe? Because, like you said, we're pathologizing, unless we know those things, we're pathologizing valid, reactions to
Mhm.
real life situations.
Like, so I've mentioned family and children's place before, where Stephanie and I used to work together. So for most of the time, there were only clinical staff
Hmm.
were therapists, but for a short time, there was also a case manager,
Hmm.
and the case manager is more responsible for helping them get resources for those basic needs. So
Right.
helping them apply to food stamps, helping them look for jobs, helping them find housing, stuff like that. And I always noticed that my clients that saw both me and the case manager did so much better. Like their
Hmm.
mental health was so much better once they started working with the case manager, because that wasn't a part of my job. Like my
Right.
job was not, my job was to give them therapy.
Yeah.
But if like getting therapy when they don't have secure housing,
Hmm.
secure, their family doesn't feel safe and secure, is
Yeah.
only going to get you so
It
far.
kind of seems pointless, because
Yeah.
how can you tell somebody, like, oh, your thoughts are irrational, we need to change your thoughts, when their thoughts aren't irrational? They are literally like, I don't feel safe at home, so I'm in fight or flight all the time. Or, I don't
Mhm.
have a home, so I am constantly anxious and depressed because I have nowhere to go at night. I have nowhere to put my things. I have nowhere to collect things. I have nowhere to have any mail sent to apply for a job. Like, all of these things. No, your thoughts aren't irrational then. And
Yeah.
so the therapy kind of does nothing at that point. You're right. Thankfully, where I work now, we have case managers, and we have really good case managers too. And shout out to the case managers,
Mhm.
but because they are so helpful. I
So helpful.
love them. They come in, and I love when they come in, and I'm like, I'm so glad you're here, because me and the client were just talking about this, and like, they don't know how they're going to get groceries this month. Like, can you help with that? And they're like, we can, we'll give you. And it's like, oh, good. Because that just took a small little burden off their shoulder. We're not able to change their, their class. We're not able to change their socioeconomic position. We're not able to change right now, the system that is putting people in this situation, but maybe we can get them groceries for the next month. And that's one less thing they have to worry about for that month. And, hopefully the ultimate goal is that they won't need case management anymore. But some people will always struggle to get their basic needs met.
Until there's systemic change. I mean,
Right.
like what we're talking about is more like, the micro social work, the working with the client one-on-one. But the real way to see long-lasting change in people's mental and physical health is through systemic change.
Yes.
But
100%. And
yeah.
And that's that is a whole nother topic too. But
right, that's what I was gonna say. I don't think we should get into that.
We do that a lot, but yeah, it's until everyone's basic needs are met, we're not, as a society, as a country, going to achieve self-actualization and be all that we can be as human beings, because we are too much focused on survival, even in the United States of America. And that might be weird for some people, but it's reality.
Yeah. And I get kind of annoyed. Like, okay, when people say hashtag first world problems, or like, like, and it's just like meant to be like funny when you're like complaining about something trivial, and then people are like, haha, first world problems. But first world problems are not, I think the saying should be like middle upper class problems, because a lot of people have problems here that we wouldn't think they would in nation in the world. There's just no excuse for it, honestly. Like wondering where you're gonna get your next week's groceries is
ridiculous.
That's a first world problem. Like, not having a place to live is clearly a first world problem.
Yeah.
So if you're complaining because, Netflix is down or whatever, haha, first world problems. Well, stop saying that, because there are very serious problems in the first world.
Yes, absolutely. I completely agree. So we've got a few minutes left. I mean, but there was something else that I wanted to kind of go into that's also sort of the same thing. So yeah, we talked about that sort of typical advice, and there's lots of other mental health advice, and I'm sure you guys can think of tons that you've heard people say that you're like, oh my God, like whatever, if I could, I would have already done it. But just getting therapy, let's just start there. If you're even able to get therapy.
Yeah, that was one of my points I wanted to
Okay, we're on the same page.
Yeah, just access to care, because
and why is that hard?
Don't have insurance.
Yes.
And a lot of, or even those that do have insurance, a lot of therapists aren't taking insurance these days because the payout from insurance companies is not a lot.
I know. And I'm sure a lot of therapists out there are not going to like what I'm going to say, but I don't care. I think it is very classist to not take health insurance and to not,
or at least have a sliding scale.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Sliding scale. Yes.
Sliding scale.
Good, but you have to have really low sliding scale for some people, because
we should explain what a sliding scale is.
Yeah.
The sliding scale is when you adjust your rate depending on income level.
Yeah. So like if someone made $20,000 a year, they would pay like $20 a session or something. It might be a little different, but that's kind of the typical way they do it, which is okay, except they may not have that $20 a week,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and there's 4 weeks in a month, and, you know, there's 12 months in a year. Like, you may not have that. So that can be a barrier, is just that a lot of therapists don't take any sort of insurance, and
And even those
I
that
think it's wrong.
it is, yeah,
But
it's wrong. And I think so. Okay, so now having been at a job where I take insurance,
mhm.
because my last job was grant funded, and now
Right, which they were not having to pay anyways,
right.
because a grant was paying for it, so
That
there's a
and that was
difference.
amazing. Like,
Yeah.
I was so just so happy that all of these families were able to get
Mhm.
free therapy. If they were a victim of a crime, which was really sad, obviously, that they were a victim of a crime, but it was such a good thing that they were able to get
Right, that they didn't
therapy.
have to worry about the bill for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But now taking insurance is a nightmare. Oh my God.
It
Like,
is.
it's
It is.
awful. And I'm not saying that I don't own the practice, so like I don't have an option, but
Mhm.
I would still take it anyway, despite what a nightmare it is, but it just needs to not be such a nightmare. Like,
Yes.
they
Yes.
like the insurance companies are just like ruthless, and they just make it so hard for therapists to get. Like, I have stuff from like February that I still haven't been paid for. And um and so
Wow.
it's just, and part of that is because I've been procrastinating, but part of it is because the insurance companies are just so difficult to deal with. And I don't want to get into that too much, but if
Mhm.
if the insurance companies would just be nicer, and then the
Would just
therapist,
pay for things, or not
yeah,
not make you go through 100 loops
right,
to
and then the
first
therapist,
get on their,
yes,
panel, and then to bill, and then to, why is it so it's so complicated to bill insurance?
I don't know. And then more therapists would be willing to take insurance, and we wouldn't
Right.
have this problem. And even sometimes I was still having to charge people like $120 out of pocket every week, even if they had insurance,
Yeah.
because insurance only covered like, so the full fee is 150, so insurance covered like $30. And they
Right.
and they
Yeah.
only and because they have a high
And then
deductible.
have to pay, right.
So
Or,
sometimes even
like,
if you do
sometimes
have
it's,
insurance,
yeah, or it only
yeah.
pays for so many sessions, or
Mhm.
it only pays for a particular kind of it. Like, some insurances, even, like, it has to be a particular type of intervention. And so if you're a therapist seeing someone with that sort of insurance, like, you have to make sure that you're using that intervention and you're documenting it to get paid for it. And
Mhm.
so it's just, which is fine. I mean, you should use evidence-based stuff, and a lot of insurances pull from that, and that's why they want to see documentation of evidence-based stuff. But it's just they're very picky. I mean, I don't know how many times I get notes sent back to me that's like, you need to change this because insurance won't pay for it unless that's in there. And I'm like, oh, great. And it's like, I just want to do my job, but that's
Mhm.
part of it. That's part of the job.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, but you're right. Therapists would have an easier time, and they would take insurance, and that would make it easier for people
Mhm.
to get
And
therapy.
insurance needs to just be better. Like,
Yeah.
there's no excuse. If you have insurance, you should not have to pay over $100 a week. And just the
Yeah.
fact that so many people still don't have insurance is a
Right.
problem.
That they're
And
uninsured. Again, first world
yeah.
problems, being
Yeah.
uninsured in the United States of America. Um, yeah. And so insurance is a big, and just payment in general, money is a big barrier to
Mhm.
getting therapy. What are some other barriers that, like, we've experienced from working, in different with different populations? Like, what
I
did you
think
see as the biggest barrier?
I think location, not so much
Hmm.
anymore now that
With telehealth
telehealth has,
has
yeah, has
helped.
um and I think for sure even after the pandemic has passed, telehealth is still, now it's like more mainstream because it's
Yes.
people's only
People
option.
are used to it. So,
Yeah. But
mhm.
before it was, or even before like it was a technology was available, and definitely before it became this common, just location. Like
Mhm.
most therapist offices are not in low income areas. And
Yeah.
like we said before, a lot of low income people don't have cars, don't have
Mhm.
access, ability to get to those places. Back to
Mhm.
the safety issue, like it's not safe as a woman to take public transportation at night, and sometimes that's the only time you can go to therapy. So let's say
Mhm.
you want to take the train and go to therapy for your 6 o'clock appointment in the
Mhm.
winter, like
And
it's
it's
dark
dark.
and it's not
Yeah.
safe. And
And you're on the train for 45 plus minutes, and then you're in
mhm,
therapy for an hour. There's a lot of time involved in that too, just like with we talked about with going to a workout class. Going to therapy is a lot of time
mhm,
invested.
yeah,
Typically an hour a week or an hour every other week, but generally no less than that, because then it's just not as effective until it's maintenance. Um,
mhm,
which just means like you've gotten to the point where you just need sort of like irregular or maybe once a month sort of check-ins with your therapist, because you're maintaining, you're doing well. But when people typically start therapy, it's best to go once a week.
mhm,
But sometimes, like I have to do every other week for people just because of that, because they don't have time and they don't have transportation or whatever. And that's like the best we can do. Cause I'm like, if you're only coming once a month, like we're not going to get anywhere quick enough
mhm.
to help you. But so that's, I do think telehealth has helped in that way, making it easier for people. Even though it has its own issues, it's
Yeah.
definitely opened up. People don't have to worry about getting rides to
And that's
therapy if they have Wi-Fi,
right. That's what I was gonna say, that
Mhm.
even telehealth itself is classist, because I mean most people have a phone at least.
Yeah,
But what if you couldn't afford to pay your phone bill?
which
What if
has
you
totally happened. I've had clients be like,
Yeah.
my phone is shut off and I have no Wi-Fi because they took that too, especially with this
Yeah.
pandemic. So then it's like, okay, well, and you can't come into the office. So I guess I'll just call me when your phone comes back on. I mean, like what do you do? I mean, I send them to places that can help, pay those bills. But I
Mhm.
mean, that's all I can do at that point. And so especially with this pandemic, that's happened a lot. People are getting their utilities shut off.
Mhm. Yeah. And also, I mean, therapy plus medications as well, like psychiatrists, medications cost money.
Hmm.
Um,
And they may not always be covered by your insurance, which
mhm.
happens. And then the psychiatrist has to either try to find something that is similar that your insurance will cover, or you have to just either go without or find a way to pay for it. I mean, it's awful. Some people, need a certain level of medication that their insurance just won't pay for, and they can't afford it, and it's expensive. I know what those medications cost,
Yeah.
and um, I mean, I've been uninsured before, in my adult life, and that was really scary. Um, Thankfully, it was only for a few months. I was lucky in that way, but just those few months, it was really scary, and so trying to figure out how am I going to get the medication that I take every day
Mhm.
to literally keep me alive, my antidepressant. I mean, because this is not just, you know, these are not like supplements people are taking. These are
Yeah.
life-saving
Right.
medications for mental health issues. And to have to worry about that every day. So, because that's what I was going to say was getting medication. therapy and medication together work really well and are often, suggested that people use those together, but not
Mhm.
everyone can get meds, can get access to their meds, especially when I worked with the homeless population at the psychiatric hospital that I worked with. That was the
Mhm.
biggest issue. We saw a lot of people coming back in for their psychiatric disorders because they weren't able to keep up with their medication that their physician prescribed them when they left, or they missed their, monthly shot um, of medication. There's some psychiatric and substance use disorders that can be managed with like a monthly shot, and there's a few drugs like that, and they couldn't even make those because these people did not have transportation or a place to live, or they didn't know what they were going to be doing from day to day. And
Mhm.
so their life was already disorganized in that way, and their basic needs weren't being met. Now they're without this medication, and now they are clinically disorganized in that their mental health their symptoms are so bad that they're not even aware of how to go about getting that help again. And so they
Mhm.
get sent back to the hospital. And then it was like, hey, why are you here again? Because you
Cycle.
missed
Yeah.
because you missed your shot. And so just little things like that could be really difficult for people. And um, those are big barriers.
Mhm.
Because if you don't have that sort of medication, you may not be able to make your therapy appointments. You may not be able to keep a job. You may not be able to even live in a house because
Mhm.
some psychiatric disorders get so bad, um,
Yeah.
like severe mental illness, what we're talking about. Like,
Yeah, I think that's a really good point that when you said life-saving, like,
hmm
we're not just talking about like, the general public mental health, like,
yeah,
people who have mild issue. We're talking about people with serious mental illnesses,
yes,
I mean,
that
I
cannot
remember.
function.
Yeah, like, at, our old job,
hmm
there were a couple times where the kids were having suicidal thoughts, and I
Yeah,
I said, "We might need to take them to the psychiatric hospital," and the parents will say, "That's gonna be so expensive. I can't do
yeah,
that," and it's just, oh my god, it's
and it
so
is
sad.
expensive.
It's so sad that
Yeah.
this child is having suicidal thoughts and they
hmm
can't get help because they can't afford it.
hmm
Like, these are serious, serious issues.
hmm
I mean, yeah, you worked at a hospital,
Yeah, I know
you
how
know
much it costs. I saw their bills, um and I saw how things went down on the inside, and that again is another topic. But I'm glad I worked there, even though I'm glad I left there. I'm very glad that I worked there too, because I think that was just like a sort of an invaluable experience for me. Um, in that I I just saw a totally different side of things. And you think, I guess before I worked there, I thought, oh, well, yeah, if you're having suicidal ideation, like go to the hospital. Okay, they'll keep you safe. You'll be out in 72 hours. Like it'll all be good. But it's so not that easy. And
Mhm.
so here's another thing. As therapists, we and clinicians, if somebody's expressing suicidal ideation, which is like where they want to die or they have a plan and they've expressed that they want to kill themselves and things like that. Or homicidal ideation, I saw a lot of that too, where they're expressing um, that they want to kill someone in particular, and they have a plan and they have a means and all that stuff. And that's typically homicidal ideation is typically more with like severe mental illness, with
Mhm.
psychiatric issues. if someone's in psychosis, you see that a lot. They don't actually want to kill anyone. It's part of the illness, but they know, they're aware enough to tell you, like, I'm feeling this way and I'm concerned. And you're like, okay, we're going to get you help. And so you send them to the hospital, and they get on a 72-hour hold, most likely, by the doctor to keep them there, which is, a 72-hour hold is legally, as long as you can keep someone, unless, in a hospital, unless a judge signs off that they stay longer. So typically people are there for 72 hours. If they stay longer, it's a whole nother legal thing, but against their will, not voluntary. Which happens a lot, because people are like, I don't need this, I don't want to, and it's like, well, yes, you do. So anyways, they're there 72 hours, and they get on some medication, and they get some sleep, and they get some food, and they start to, come to their more rational state. Their symptoms are subsiding, and then it's like, okay, your 72 hours are up. Like, who are you going to follow up with? Do you have a doctor? Do you have a prescriber? Do you have a therapist? No, go to this community mental health place. Yes, the wait is really long, and it's going to take you like 3 months to get in to see a psychiatrist, but don't forget to take your medicine, because you need that, or you will have a relapse again if you don't take your medicine. And it's like, oh, okay. And then they leave, they're discharged. And then a couple months later, they get slapped with this bill. And it's just like, it's not the easiest thing in the world. It's not even moderately difficult. It's very difficult. That is a situation where someone or several people's lives are at stake, for this person to get help. And even that access can be hard. Even getting in can be hard. Just because you go to the hospital and say that you're having these symptoms or you're having these thoughts doesn't mean they will admit you. And that's a sad thing too. So, and that's happened before.
I know I've sent a couple clients to the hospital, and they were out of beds, and they had to send them home, and they just had to make a safety plan and said, like, okay, this is how you're gonna keep your child safe for, for 24 hours, and
right, until we have a bed, or until they no longer express, suicidal ideation. And the good news is, usually those sort of symptoms and those sort of thoughts and desires go away, after a couple of days. They don't sustain themselves for very long. And so that's the point of hospitalizing someone, is if you can keep them safe for 24, 48, 72 hours, then by that time that probably will go away. They won't be expressing that anymore. They'll be more rational again, and they'll be like, oh yeah, I didn't really want to kill myself, but that's not always possible for families to do, for someone who is, very intent on it, or very secretive about what they're doing. If they're an adult, it can be even harder for families.
And back to classism, where, well, I can't keep an eye on my
I can't take off work
family member, right? Because I can't take off work.
I can't watch them, 24/7. I have other kids in the home that I have to watch, and so these are all like, these are real life issues. I mean, we see them with the clients we work with. I know other clinicians and other health professionals see these same things too. If you're listening, you might know someone or yourself have experienced these barriers and these issues, and many, many more. And we don't have a solution. We don't have really any tips to give you that will make it all better. Just that you do the best you can with what you have, and hopefully one day these things change and enough people, get together and make them change.
Yeah.
Through advocacy and from a systemic level, so that these barriers are not there, and it's much easier for people to access the mental health help that they need. Um, and so,
Yeah.
even though we talked about how difficult all of this is and how it can be classist, please don't let this deter you from trying. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
reach out to friends and family if you can. Reach out to your therapist if you're seeing one, or your counselor, or your doctor. Let somebody know what you're experiencing, what symptoms you're having. Yeah, and look online. I mean, really, like,
There's a suicide hotline as
yes,
well.
yes, the suicide. Yeah, do you want to share that? You know what it is?
1-800-273-TALK. Is that?
Yes, I think yeah.
I'll look it up just to make sure. I think that's what it is. Or just 800, not 1-800. 800-273-8255. So 800-273-TALK. So they have, you can call, or they have that online chat.
Yeah, which I think is cool that you can do that now. You can even text some of these hotlines now, which is great.
Yeah.
Because, like, a lot of people don't want to pick up the phone anyways on a good day. And so then on their worst day, it's like, I don't want to actually talk to someone, but I want to talk to someone. So there's lots of ways you can do that. And there's tons of other hotlines out there too for so many different things. We'll post a lot of these on our Instagram, so you guys can share them. But there's for domestic violence,
I got a message.
teams.
I got a message on my professional Instagram from someone who just recently lost a friend to suicide, and he started this app called Aaboo, AABBOO, anonymous vent voice chat rooms. So you just go on there and you find strangers and you just like vent to strangers.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
Okay, that's really good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's lots of apps and stuff online. I mean, if you can't go to therapy, but you want, to learn some skills, there are people teaching some of these skills on YouTube. I would definitely be careful and do your research. You don't want to just take mental health advice from just anyone with a YouTube channel or an Instagram or a podcast.
Or podcast, I was gonna say, yeah.
But do your research on them, and always do your research. But there's lots of really great stuff out there that people are sharing for free because of how difficult it is to access some of this. So,
yeah, there's definitely a lot. I mean, Facebook groups, Reddit, there's a lot of threads, if
Discord servers and threads that people use. So, just that's all you can do is the best you can with what you have in this moment. That's all you can do. And as long as you're doing your best, that's what matters. And
I think another big takeaway is remember that everyone is dealing with something. Like there's always more to something than meets the eye, because we do sometimes tend to be quick to judge, especially, and it's understandable. Like people who have always been in the middle upper class and have they've just never had to think about these things.
Right.
And people who don't struggle with mental illness, and so it is kind of quick to not even necessarily judge, but just ask, like, well, if they're struggling so much, why don't they just see a therapist? I don't understand.
Right. Yeah.
And there's always more. There's always something that might be going on that you just don't know.
Yes, absolutely. You gotta come to everyone with compassion because
Mhm.
you don't know where they're coming from. And before giving out any advice to anyone, see if they even want your advice.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah, that's
I
a
mean, that's a big thing. Like, don't tell someone what they need to do to feel better, unless they ask you. And typically,
or offer, be like, "Can I offer some
Yeah, yeah.
advice?"
I
Yeah.
have a suggestion that might help if you haven't already tried this or thought of this. There's ways to do it, but generally, when people reach out to talk to you, they just want you to listen. And that's
Mhm.
what you learn as a therapist,
Yeah.
that people don't want your advice anyways, as much as they want you to listen and hold that space for them and just be present with them, because they don't often get that in their
And
life.
that's something a therapist can, or anyone, but
Mhm,
just back to what we were saying, that as therapists we can only do so much if their basic needs aren't met.
mhm.
That's something that we can always give someone no matter
Yes,
what,
yes.
is that space to feel heard, and to feel heard by by someone that's not going to just give advice, because being given advice that is so oversimplified and by someone who
Mhm,
doesn't know the whole story is so off-putting. Like
mhm.
it
Yeah.
really is just sort of minimizing, and it's sort of uh it's sort of I don't know what the word, like, it makes a person feel kind of lonely, because it's
Yeah.
like they don't get me, they don't get
It's
what I'm dealing
invalidating.
with. Yeah, invalidating, yeah, and then they're just kinda like, "Oh, okay, they don't get it. I guess I can't really talk to them about this anymore because they don't seem to understand," and then
Mhm.
it just makes them feel more alone,
Yeah, for
so
sure. And it can be difficult because everyone has, I think most people have um, the best of intentions. They want
for
to
sure.
help. And that's the thing. You want to help, so you give it unsolicited advice. But
Mhm,
that's not always the best way to help. And
right.
so if you want to, this is some advice we can give you, though you didn't
If you
ask,
want
but you're listening to the podcast.
it.
So if you don't want to hear it, you can turn off now. But
Yeah.
here's some advice. If you want to help someone, but you don't know how, ask
Ask them, yes.
them. Just say just that. I want to help you, but I don't know how. What is the best way that I can help you in this
Yes,
moment? What do you
yes.
need from me right now?
Yes,
And
I get so many like questions from
mhm,
friends who'll be like, my brother, my friend, my cousin or whatever is dealing with this. How do I
right,
help? And I'm like,
right,
I can't read their mind. Ask them. Like, why are you asking me? You know,
right.
I mean, obviously I understand why they're asking me because I'm a therapist, but
Yeah.
everyone's different, and what they just being asked, what can I do to help? Even that is helpful in itself.
It does. You ask me that a
So,
lot when I talk to you about stuff. You're like,
mhm.
"Can I do anything to help?" And I'm like, "No." You can't, but
No.
well, yeah, but
Yeah.
you can't because there's nothing you can do about this particular thing. But you asking and just listening and caring made me feel better. Even if it was for just the time we were talking, like that
Mhm.
goes a long way because you think,
Aw.
oh, yeah, you think,
Yeah.
oh, that's sweet. Somebody gives a shit about me.
Mhm.
Um, and some people, everyone just wants to feel like somebody gives a shit about them.
And
So,
if you get asked that question, I think we need to wrap up. But
yeah, yeah, but we'll end here. Yeah.
if you get asked what can, like, if someone asks you what can I do to help, it's okay to be honest. Like,
Hmm.
if you say to them, I want you to tell me that everything's gonna be okay, and I want you to hold me, and I want you
Hmm.
to play with my hair and kiss me, and you can give
Yeah.
them all of those, like, exactly what you need, and there's nothing wrong with
And
that.
yeah, and they can do what they feel comfortable.
Yeah.
They may not
Like
want to
those
kiss
that was
you. They
well,
may,
that
I
was
don't
very
know.
specific. I
I
was
know.
thinking of, like, in a couple, obviously,
Right. I'm just
but,
kidding.
like, um
But you're
but, yeah,
right.
there's
Yeah,
nothing
just
wrong with
tell them.
asking. Like, you don't
Hmm.
have to be, quote, "strong." Like, you can say,
Hmm.
I need a shoulder to cry on. I need you
Yeah.
to to hug me and
I just
tell
need you to sit with me for a minute.
yeah.
Or even practical things. So, like, if your basic needs are not being met and that is contributing to your mental health issues, and someone says, "What can I do to help?" Tell them what they can do. So, it may not be, "Well, I need you to give me money," but it may be, I really need a ride to this doctor's appointment. I really need a ride to the grocery store. I need a break. I need some childcare. And based on your relationship with that person, you should know what is appropriate to ask. But if you need that, ask the people in your life for it that you do have. That's what we should be doing for each other.
Yeah.
We should be caring for each other until we live in a world where everyone's basic needs are met, just by default. We need to be looking out for each other in that way. That sense of community goes a long way as well. So that's our advice. And that is our podcast today about mental health advice being classist and a whole lot of other things that we
we did kind of
into.
jump around a little bit, but
But yeah,
yes,
so
if you enjoy this episode, please share with friends and family.
yes, and don't forget to follow the show's Instagram for updates on new episodes and for some mental health advice at just_mental_health_podcast. We record a new episode every week. This is Steph.
And Em, signing off. Thanks for listening.
Bye.